series. So today is the first conversation. Today is the first conversation we're having. So I'm going to briefly introduce our speakers, and I'm going to do two things before we delve into the conversations for today. First, I'm going to introduce our speakers. We have Mr. Richard Abubakar, Umar is the Executive Director, Youth Voyage. We also have the second speaker is Victor Temitope Amusa, founder, Waste Bazaar Limited. Oh, and I'm going to give us a brief I'm going to give a brief about what all COP27 is all about, because some people, they're behind what's all these COP27 conversations they're having. So I'll try to just give a brief down what this whole COP27 is all about, so that everybody has, even people that don't know so much about climate action and resilience and all of that can have a brief understanding of what it is. Then I will introduce the speakers, brief us about the ground rules, and then we'll delve into the conversations proper. So first and foremost, our first speaker is Mr. Richard Abubakar Umar. Like I said earlier, he's an activist and an entrepreneur who has worked in the African region and internationally as a young green advocate, pushing for young people's involvement in the fight for climate change and the SDGs. He's been doing that for over 15 years. His experience of over 10 years as a grassroots campaigner and student on issues like climate change, advocacy campaigns, transparency, and development as they affect vulnerable communities. And then the second speaker, Victor Temitope Amusa, is the founder and CTO at Waste Bazaar. Waste Bazaar is a waste management clean tech that efficiently collects and recycles trash while creating a network to protect residents and informal collectors. By this, he's combining his interest in technology, environment, and socio-economic development. Victor is also an alumni of the Mandela Washington Fellowship. He was previously awarded the member of the Global Plastic Innovators Network at the World Economic Forum. So that's just a brief of our two speakers. And the ground rules, please remember to mute your mic so that we can have a meaningful conversation that is uninterrupted. And there'll also be a time slot for questions. So if you have any questions, we would address those questions, but please type them in the comment section. Also to inform you that conversations are being recorded. So for those who may not be able to wait till the end of this or want to catch up on what we have discussed, please check our social media handles, ICCD Africa. You would be able to find those recordings there so you can listen to them and follow up. And like I said earlier, I also said I was going to talk about what COP27 is all about, and what is all this we've been talking about, so that people can have like a ground rule of what we are talking about. So it's I'm repeating that again, the COP27 consultation series is supported by UN Nigeria, and this is just a platform for youth to engage, share ideas, and fashion their stance ahead of COP27, which is going to be held in Egypt. And COP means the Conference of Parties, and is a series of United Nations climate change conferences which have been running since 1995. COP takes place each year unless parties to the convention agree otherwise. And 2022 with 27th occurrence of this conference, so that's why it's referred to as COP27. And the goals of the conference is to review progress made by members of the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, that's UNFCCC, to limit climate change. It is also an important forum for a wide variety of stakeholders from around the world to gather and discuss climate crisis and solutions. And COP is the main decision-making body of the UNFCCC. It includes representatives for all the countries that are signatories. So that is a brief rundown of what COP is all about, and it shows why it is very important that we have these conversations as Nigerian youths, and we get our stance and our feedback to government and the necessary stakeholders. So now I'm going to give the floor to our speakers to talk to us about how they think Nigerian youths can build climate adaptation and resilience on the road to COP27. So the first person I'm going to call upon to do justice to that is Mr. Richard Abubakar Umar, Executive Director, Youth Voyage. Mr. Richard, good morning.
Yeah, good morning. Adenike,
Good
thank you. Yeah, thank you for giving me the floor. Yeah, in order to set the ball rolling, I would want to say that young people have a very vital role to play towards resilience as we prepare for COP27, because in our collective quest of driving adaptation and resilience, we have to look at quick implementive solutions or even sustainable solutions, because we've been going to COPs, we've been following up on activities, we've been following up on commitments since the Paris Agreement, and we are yet to see key implementable based on the agreement, based on the policies, based on the development plans. We are yet to see them on the ground in vulnerable communities. So young people have been playing a role of advocacy, of pushing policymakers towards action. And in building resilience in the process, young people have been very innovative in terms of providing local solutions, in terms of looking at ways we can adapt to our current climate crisis. Like, for example, when you look at issues surrounding waste management, we have a lot of young people that have been innovative about creating solutions like converting plastic waste into cooking gases that has drastically reduced the amount of plastic waste, using plastic waste, reusing plastic waste and converting them into market bags. And you now have young people even using organic waste to produce briquettes and biochar that are serving as alternatives to production. So you're looking at, like, for example, in Maiduguri, we have a young guy that has just started building solar driven buses, small buses for shuttles for mass transit. So we are getting young people every day coming up with one solution or the other within to address the issue of climate change. But government, on the other hand, have been doing wonderful well with policy formation, with adaptation plans, and just was it day before yesterday? I guess the African Union just launched its its African Union Climate Change Resilient Development Strategic Plan. Wonderful document. I've just been going through the document to see, but the crux of the matter here is how has vulnerable communities be affected by all these strategies and policies? Because I'm a community man, I'm a village man. I drive community engagement and advocacy. I'm the voice of the voiceless. How have they seen this on the ground? The policies are at the national level. Marks they bring in the subnational level, that's state government. How have local governments been actually involved in addressing the issues of building resilience? Because I feel the issue of climate change is actually local than being an urban thing. Though we have the urban crisis, but the vulnerable communities feel the impact more. And young people have been building this engagement, have been trying to the mouthpiece, have been running out. But I feel is not enough. Government has more pragmatic roles to take in ensuring that climate change becomes a very, very workable act or action, because we have to move these policies to action. We have to move the talk to work. Building resilience is beyond, okay, young people are making effort. What better platforms have been created for young people to drive this process? Are they green grants for young people, innovative young people, to further expand these innovations towards this direction? So as we work towards moving to COP27, I have a lot of expectations at this COP, because if we have all these strategic plans in place, I believe it has to be pragmatic. We have all these innovations already coming up on their own. We have to see how we can expand the market. We have to see how we can now be on the path of transition. We can see what fossil fuel is turning into now globally just because of the Ukraine and Russia fiasco. Now the world, everybody is feeling the brunt. Wherever you are in the world, diesel in Nigeria is now 820 per liter. Depends where you are. Some places you buy it for 900, 950 per liter. So everything is going to affect drastically everything, to food, to the daily livelihood of people, even in the local communities now. So how do we join this transition? How can we, are we equal to the task of saying we're joining this transition fully? So I want to see a situation whereby, as young people are trying their best in the area of advocacy, you're creating this as an effort on its own. Then as we're working towards this direction, we want to see governments push towards building real resilience. Now, the raining system, the rain systems have changed, the rain patterns have changed. Farmers now are suffering so much because they don't understand these patterns. How do we localize, domesticate all these meteorological indices about what is expected to come? How do we get farmers to learn how to have storage? Because we're talking about resilience, you have to talk about sustainable livelihood, sustainable economy for people, and alternative innovations that are eco-friendly, that can make people still adapt to their normal communities and not suffer the brunt of it. So with the floodings coming, we have to see how best we can get our people to understand the effect of climate change. How do we do that? We need to get young people down there, like organizations like us are already on the ground, trying our best at our own level to ensure that the communities understand this. But at what level are we driving this process? So I'm looking at solutions in COP27. I'm looking at government, looking at this transition as a real business, looking at this transition as a trade business on how to better the livelihoods of affected communities in Nigeria. I'm looking at how our negotiators or how our private sectors will go into this system and see how we can attract direct foreign investment. Even you're talking about carbon credit, about providing alternative solutions. How do our greenpreneurs that have these innovations, how do they scale it up? How do they patent this? How do they market it? These are areas where we can actually saturate the green economy or build a green economy that will feed this transition or make this transition move faster. So with my expectations for COP, I would want to see that our team or our Nigerian government goes to the COP with a business mind, with a broad mind of affecting our economy drastically and seeing how they can impact on greenpreneurs that are mostly young people who have provided solutions, especially in the areas of waste management, in the area of food storage, in the area of in the areas of even domesticating the local technologies down here, so that economic activities, the way the telecom is boosting now, let the green economy come as a sector on its own, so that we can see that, yeah, we are really on this path and we can really push young people and make them attain their dreams with the innovations they have, not see them getting frustrated without support, without opportunities for them to drive this process. So I think I'll stop here. Maybe Amos will have something.
Okay, you are muted. So thank you very much, Mr. Abubakar, for your great contribution. That was very, very, powerful. And I can say that this is one of the ways whereby we start building a conversation that leads to what young people want to see and reflect in the outcome that we want to see our government is taking to COP27. And not only and for an input, or also is for a proper integration of what Nigerian youth is actually doing in complementing the effort of the government to build resilience. And this is the way forward for us to see how we can speak and talk more on this conversation. So thank you, Abubakar, for that, Richard, for that comprehensive contribution. We'll be calling you back to also give us more input on this conversation as we move on. So please stay online and let us.
Yeah, no problem.
Thank you so much. So I want to quickly let our people know, for those that are joining, please rename yourself. I think a lot of people are using my link that did not register. Please rename yourself by checking your tab. Just rename yourself immediately, because I can see most of you are bearing my name as I can see. So moving on, thank you again, Mr. Richard. I will be calling on our brother, Mr. Victor Amusa. Nikki have already introduced Mr. Musa to us, and it's going to be giving us his own contribution on the conversation we are having today. We are looking at engaging Nigerian youths in building climate adaptation and resilience on the way forward to COP27. At the end of this conversation, we're going to be sharing a lot of recommendations that will be going through the supporter partnership with UN Nigeria. And we're also bringing more partners on board to have a robust conversation in moving forward to this opportunity that we are seeing, that we want to achieve together towards COP20. Because if you look at COP27 this year, it's coming earlier in November. And there is this urgency of what do we want? Where are we going to? And how can we achieve together to build a sustainable future for the young people? So Mr. Mr. Victor Amusa will also be sharing from his own view, where he's coming from and things he has been doing to also, implement and engage young people as well. And we want to hear from him on how we can continue to see ourselves building a climate adaptation and resilience as we move on to COP27. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Olumide. I'm quite excited to be on this call. I want to say globally, we are in a very, very, very tough time. Across developing countries, the problem of hunger, poverty, epidemic breakout, and the raging climate change with rising average temperature, shifting seasons and weather patterns, increasing rate of extreme weather occurrences, and rising sea levels amidst other devastating impacts. Interestingly, the quicker the climate changes, the longer time it takes for efforts channel that adaptation to have the desired results. And the costlier the process becomes. Taking us back to elementary science about living things, one of the characteristics of living things is that they respond to stimuli. So when there is a shift, there is a corresponding response. Climate adaptation is simply an adjustment shift, or possibly also the expected shift. Countries and communities also need to develop adaptation solutions and implement action in response to the impact of climate change that is currently happening, and as well as also prepare for anticipated impacts in the future. Because cases of impact of climate change seem to be a continuum, except something urgently is done. For example, in cases of floods, one very good adaptation method will be to build flood defense systems. And in cases of extreme weather, it's about setting up early warning systems for tropical storms. People should not be caught unaware. In cases of droughts, it's about switching to or designing crops or breeds that are resistant to drought. Still, in cases of extreme weather, it's about designing communication systems that can stand the harsh realities of climate change. We can only build strong adaptation and resilience through exhaustive engagement of stakeholders and very effective management of existing knowledge and innovative breakthroughs that young people across the world and especially in Nigeria are working on. Climate adaptation is expectedly all-inclusive, since no region or sector of life is immune to the impact of climate change. I want to say residents should become more climate aware. Someone like Olumide and a whole lot of young people in Nigeria are doing so much in creating advocacy, in creating the necessary conversation around this topic, especially because of the possibilities of, and they should also be aware of possibilities of natural disasters around them and what resources are immediately available in case it happens. That might mean purchasing insurance ahead for some of us who don't have insurance for our homes and we're in vulnerable communities, having schemes that can provide insurance, that in case of disasters, you can have something to fall back on. Or as well knowing where we can get disaster information or relief during crisis. Some simple but effective adaptation measures that Nigerian youth have actively engaged in, are part of tree planting, nature-based solutions, conservation of forests to keep the temperatures or rising temperatures in check, since trees are the lungs of the planet. Another area is in designing climate-smart offices that reduces and often eradicates air conditioning. Like the refrigerant of air conditioners are majorly chlorofluorocarbons, which themselves are harmful and also contributory to climate change, global warming and climate change. So cold chain innovations around reducing food waste to also lower methane emission rates are also some very beautiful innovations by young people in Nigeria. Climate smart infrastructural designs to withstand rising temperatures and more devastating storms are other areas of innovations. Also innovations around alternative means of transportation for cities in the coastal areas, because when there is huge flood, there need to be flood prevention mechanisms and innovations. These projects or these items I'm highlighting are currently being worked on by highly resourceful young people in this country. Another area is in the area of climate smart municipal waste management innovations, like we do at Waste Bazaar, where we digitize municipal waste management and help municipalities make informed decisions through access to verifiable data and advancement of sustainability. Some areas of thought where Nigerian youths can be engaged in building climate adaptation are first through facilitating the provision. How do we engage these people? Facilitate the provision of financial and technological support for climate smart innovations. And that is why we can't talk about climate change, climate action, without mentioning climate finance. Now, what had actually stalled the whole process of interventions in the climate action space is because there's very minimum contribution or funding available in that space. So I am an advocate of climate finance to drive effective climate action. Another area where youth, Nigerian youth especially, can be engaged in building climate adaptation and resilience are that Nigerian youth are spread around research institutes in this country. So strengthening their technical capabilities through exchange opportunities as well as institutional capabilities through aids and collaboration for impact is one way to engage them. For example, if you look at the Nigerian Institute Research for Trypanosomiasis Research, for example, in Ibadan, looking at collaborating with people, young people in this space to look at definitive areas of impact where there can be, exchange and there can be knowledge sharing. Another area is that knowledge is, an African proverb says, is power. So constantly sharing information, knowledge and guidance about areas of needs in adaptation and resilience can be an eye opener for major innovative breakthrough. So climate adaptation hackathons or adaptation challenge competitions can further increase the participation of young people in developing adaptation solutions, especially for the vulnerable population. There has to be continuous provision of political space through which young people can engage with decision makers. I want to reiterate the fact that government across all levels, multilateral organizations, international organizations, civil societies, or every stakeholder needs to be accountable. There has to be continuous engagement of these people by youth for accountability and stock taking of the progress that had been made so far since the last conference of parties. Youth need to come to the table without fear or intimidation to ask the big question of what has changed. Because we can't just say we want to engage young people without giving them the leverage, the opportunity to ask the questions around climate action without fear or intimidation. So not ignoring the fact that everyone, also inclusive of we youth ourselves, are likewise stakeholders in matters of climate, as it is a very integral part of life. Now, I believe these few highlights should be points that we can, rally around and see how well we can put more funding into climate finance to drive climate action for the possibility of climate adaptation and resilience of local communities. These are my submissions for now. I will also be open to further contributions as they come. Thank you, Olumide, for this platform.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mr. Victor. That was very, very detailed. Like, I just wish that we have some of our government workers or department or ministries on this call today to actually listen to what young people actually are looking at moving to COP26. And I can tell you that this is a very good. Can you hear me? Hello, can you hear me? I can tell you that this is a very good way forward for us as we continue to drive this action. I quickly want to bring Nike back to continue the moderation. Then I will pause here. I think she mistakenly signed off from the call. So Nike, you have the floor back.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, thank you very much, Olumide. Thank you very much, Olumide. Thank you so much to our speakers, Mr. Victor Musa and Mr. Abubakar. And, like Olumide said, they made some very, very interesting points, especially about innovations, about the fact that young people are already coming up innovations to help to carry everybody along in climate adaptation and resilience building. They also talked about the importance of capacity building for knowledge. We also talked about stakeholder engagement. Series like this, conversations like this are very important. They bring all stakeholders together for us to deliberate, engage, come up with recommendations that will. We also talked about collaboration and partnerships. So it's very similar to organizations, even across collaborations and partnerships, very key to helping us to build climate resilience. We also talked about very key point Mr. Victor also talked about was engagement with political space. There's so much talk we can do. We need that political willpower to be able to drive that urgent change we need. Without fear intimidation, yes, political engagement. We also need to be able to get involved in the politics of the environment without any fear of intimidation. So very excellent points made by Mr. Victor Musa and Mr. Abubakar. So I want to find out, I haven't seen any questions yet. So please, if you have any questions, please let us know. And it's very important I want to get comments and feedback from other people so that we can, come up together with constructive ideas. So comments.
Hello, Nike.
Comments. Yeah.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Hello?
Okay. So before we bring on some comments from people to respond, I quickly want to acknowledge and bring Mr. Oluseyi Shoremekun from the United Nations Information Center to also give us a contribution, a comment on why we are doing this, what's way forward, and what are the actions that we want to capture in this conversation that we are starting this series this month. So Mr. Shoremekun, you have the floor, sir. As Mr. Shoremekun is coming on board, if you want to make a comment or you want to actually say something concerning the topic before we go straight into some recommendations, please kindly raise up your hand. Nika will be calling you afterward, after Mr. Sheyi finish his comment and contribution. Thank you very much. The person raising his hand up, rename yourself. We can't know you. You are still renaming. You are still, your name is still Olumide. Please rename yourself. You want to make a comment, please. When you log in, rename yourself so we can know your name. Thank you very much. Mr. Shoremeku, you have the floor, sir. Okay, so I think Mr. Shoremeku is trying to connect to us. So Nike, I think we can bring people that want to ask questions on board and let us hear from them. Comment, questions, and everything. Just we want to listen from you concerning this topic so that we can build some recommendation moving forward. Thank you. Nike, you have the floor.
Okay, thank you. I think Mr. Abubakar Saidu has a question to ask. So Mr. Abubakar Saidu, could you please go ahead with your question? Okay, Sheifumi is okay. Sheifumi, could you please go ahead with your question?
Hello. So am I audible?
Okay, Mr. Abubakar.
Yes, we can hear you.
Yes.
We can hear you, Abubakar.
Okay.
Yes.
Well, my name is Abubakar Saidi Mudala. I'm speaking from our local organization here, is Ambassador Democracy. As the previous speaker, then Iran talked about that to improve that action or policy of climate change, we need to engage in politics. Absolutely, I strongly support what she said. As we that lead the local youth organization, we are encountering those kinds of problems. If we are marching, doing those kind of stuff to improve the climate change, I absolutely think that youth must participate in marching toward people. Like in a rural area, we are encountering this problem more and more. They are like involving or like they are inviting those global warming, where they can just pluck out those woods to make them in a firewood, something else like this, and they are, inviting global warming. But regarding that funding space, that I think the Oleshi that talk about that, I think we absolutely need that fund this fund support more and more to do those kind of things. That's about my contribution. And the questions I want to ask is that how can we really those that leading local organizations, how can we give our contribution in this policy? Okay. So that's my question. Thank you.
How can those leading local organizations, could you repeat your question?
Abubakar, can you please repeat your question, please?
Hello, Mr. Said, are you still here?
Yes, absolutely. So I say,
I know I was asking something.
Yes, I say, for those that are all local organizations, and we engage in youth and women. So how can I really contribute to these climate changes?
Okay, thank you.
So our contribution, I mean, how can we participate?
Okay, what I think you're asking is how can local organizations like yours participate in building climate resilience?
Okay, Sheyi,
Okay, thank you so
whom you
much,
have the
Mr.
floor.
Abubakar Saidu, for your contribution, and your question will be attended to.
Can I come in now?
Yes, Sheyi.
Yes,
Great.
please.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you very much, Olumide and Adenike, for getting me to speak. I am pretty much here to listen, and I wouldn't get in the way of the conversation. But I think what I want to say at this point is just for emphasis sake, point out something that Victor said when he spoke earlier, just so we don't lose sight of that. I think it's if that's the only thing we take away from this conversation, then I would say it's been a worthy conversation. And that's the fact where he talked about, the ability for young people to get a seat at the table and speak without fear about their concerns, their hopes, and what they really do hope to see when it comes to conversation around climate change. That is something that has been lacking really, really significantly. And if I do understand the concept around this conversation we're having, Nigerian Youth and Road to COP27, thanks to the UN Information Center for this support. But I really do hope that if there is one thing we're taking away, is the fact that it's about time for young people to be a part of that table and to speak fearlessly, to speak their own realities and put it forward to people that will take this decision. And that also young people are part of this process. And this is why we've been calling for, young people being engaged in different ways. We've proposed the Youth Climate Council. Currently, we're working on the Climate Youth Negotiators Program through different means and different vehicles. We've tried to see that the government takes seriously the importance of engaging young people, not just when it comes to a few months to COP and they're like, who is our young representative to follow us? Or when it comes to media and they're like, who can just do a bit of tweets and take pictures for us? No, that's not what young people should be doing when it comes to climate conversations. We face these realities day in, day out. We can articulately put ourselves forward. If we will be listened to, we can contribute to see that this change happens real quick. So I really do hope that we take that as one outcome from this conversation and we put it forward to the people that be, and that they can act on this speedily. And I really do hope we can follow through with this even after today's conversation. Thanks.
Okay, thank you very much, Sheifumi, for your contribution. And there was something very key you mentioned. You talked about young people not just being called at the last minute for the sake of inclusion. Young people should be part and parcel of these processes for there to be change, the change that is needed, not just for the photo ops or for, greenwashing. We need to be part of the conversation. We need to be part of the processes and policies. Thank you so much, Sheifumi. I think Mr. Shoria Meko is online now, so he can also make contributions to this conversation.
Okay, thank you, Nike. I think we still have some people that want to ask questions. If you still want to make a comment or contribute before we bring back Mr. Shoria, our speaker, to give us some key recommendations, then please raise up your hand and let us get that as soon as possible. Okay, so we have somebody that just read. Olusheyi Ajilore, you have the floor to speak.
Hello, good morning.
Good morning, you have the floor.
Good morning.
All right, thank you. I want to thank you to the previous speakers that we have had. For some time now, I've been following the trend of climate change, and I've noticed that there are been a lot of seminars, talks about climate change. Unfortunately, those talks have not transitioned to behavioral change. For instance, I'm in the construction industry, and then we have what we call the Green Building Council. At the moment, though we have a council that has been resistant some time now in Nigeria. However, the numbers of green building that we have in the country are less than 10. And then we also know that the construction industry contributes to about 40% of global warming or climate change. So I want to know, in what way is the in Nigeria the green building construction
Sheyi, can you repeat your?
close? Am I audible now?
Yes, you are. Your network, something was sounding under your network.
Oh, sorry. So I was saying that that the construction industry is responsible for about 40% of the global warming that we're experiencing, and that brings to a point that green building councils should have an active role in mitigating climate change. So I want to know: is there any role that the UN Nigeria or UN generally is giving out, or they are participating, or they are contributing towards the construction industry? And second, I would like to know, in what way can youth actually actively engage? Because I heard that youth have been creating some innovations and stuff, but I'm just hearing them for the first time, perhaps because I'm not in Lagos. But I would like to know, as an individual, in what way can I, as an individual, participate actively in contributing to the mitigation of a climate change in Nigeria?
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Sheyi. I think Abubakar, you've already made a comment. I don't know whether you still want to say something so that I can give some other people opportunity to speak. But with that, let me check whether Mr. Shore Mekon is back. Mr. Victor, I will call you and Abubakar back to make response to all those comments and questions as soon as possible. Mr. Sheyi Shore Mekon, sir, are you available now so that you can speak before we go back to our Q&A, sir?
Yes.
Thank you.
Am I available?
Pleased to hear from you. Welcome, sir.
Yeah, thank you very much. Good morning, everyone. And congratulations to all the young people who are on this call and in this meeting. It's really great to see young people demonstrating very keen interest in climate change matters. Because climate change issues are not the popular thematic areas for people, but it's gaining traction now with the people like you, Olumide, and other active climate change activists who are part of this meeting. Because of the criticality of the issues around climate and its implication on our health, on the livelihood, on everything we do. It has socioeconomic implications. The UN Information Center is very glad to begin this conversation, though this is leading to the COP27, but we are looking at this conversation around climate change even beyond COP27. This is like providing the platform for young people, young climate change activists, environmentalists, to express their views, to have their voices, and to have the support of the UN system. So congratulations once again. Yes, we've been talking about climate adaptation and resilience on the way to COP27. It's good and it's important. We look at many of the issues. I've followed contributions and interventions since this meeting started, since I joined. And it is quite interesting and very, very pleasing to see the knowledge of climate issues, demonstrated by the youth and the speakers. Of course, we have experts in the house. But what we just want to highlight is the Great Green Wall Initiative, which is an initiative of the government of Nigeria with the support of Senegal. And the Great Green Wall is for the West Africa. And then 11 of the 19 states of Nigeria are caught up in that Great Green Wall belt. The Great Green Wall is to address the issues around deforestation, to recover land degradation, and then also look at the community engagement aspect of it. The communities that have lost the means of livelihood, communities that have lost the asset, community assets in terms of land, in terms of farm, in terms of even cattle and everything. So how do we get them to cope with the challenge of deforestation? What can they do to arrest that? And we just want to flag something. A lot of things have been said about tree planting, and I also heard one of the speakers say, yes, beyond the tree planting, we have to look at community solution, community-based solution. Yes, it's the way to go. That is the narrative. And even the early warning system has to be a community-based, because we've read in literature how communities develop their early warning system, especially when flash flood is about to happen. I've read somewhere, I think in Southeast Asia, where pigs were the ones that will alert the community when flood is about to happen, when there is about to be, when there is flash flood, when flash flood is about to happen, so to speak. So the pig will give certain signs, and the community have so much developed to understand those cues, and this is like community-based early warning system, and they can begin to build their coping capacity, which is the resilience aspect of it, and so on. So and for the tree planting, while not discounting the importance of tree planting, but what we are encouraging at this time is that people should move away from ornamental tree planting. They should move to fruits and economic trees, because it's not just planting trees, to get the air clean, get the carbon monoxide absorbed and all that, provide the shelter and green the environment. We can also still get additional benefits from these trees. So if we plant fruit trees or economic trees, and I tell you that there is a case somewhere where the community really didn't buy into what the government is doing in terms of tree planting. So, and it's because the trees they are planting, they are alien. The species they are planting is alien to that community, so they couldn't bring themselves to take care of the trees. So, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, once again, I want to say congratulations for making this happen. And this is just the beginning, and it will go beyond COP27. But let's keep the conversation going. Let's keep the issues on the front burner of national discourse through all your social media platforms and handles. Let's keep the conversation going. And I think going forward, maybe we will work with Olumide and team to, I don't know, maybe that has been done, to come up with a hashtag for this, so that we can track, the conversation around this engagement, this monthly engagement on climate change, as we all prepare for COP27 in Egypt. So thank you very much. Do have a fruitful deliberation. Over.
Thank you very much, Mr. Sheyi. That was very, very, important for us as young people to listen to you straight from the UN Nigerian office. Thank you so much for all the contribution and some key points you've mentioned. The issue of Great Green Wall is a very big conversation for us as a country, and is even having our president as the president of the Great Green Wall moving forward is a very key conversation for us. I'll be talking much about your comments. I will respond to that after we give the floor. I will give the floor back to Nike so that Nike can continue this conversation to bring on board our speaker to, to make comments and contribution back to the question we had earlier on before we bring you on board. Thank you so much, sir. And we will continue to reach out to you for your support and contribution moving forward. Thank you so much, sir. Nike, you have the floor.
Okay. Thank you very much, Mr. Shoremeko, for those very insightful points about tree planting and their benefits. So we're now going to answer the two questions that were raised earlier. Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Shoremeko, for those very insightful points you made about tree planting and their benefits. So we're going to proceed to answer the questions that were raised by Mr. Abubakar Saidu and Oluseyi Ajilore. There was a question about, Mr. Oluseyi asked the question about group buildings. He talked about his comment on group buildings. He was trying to find out how, as a youth within the construction industry, can help to reduce, that can contribute to climate action. So let me repeat that. How, as a youth that works in the building and construction industry, how can it help to contribute to climate action? So I'll give the floor to Mr. Abubakar Umar to please answer that question for us. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. Abubakar Saidu was asking about. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Move on.
Yeah, Abubakar Saidu was talking about how do local organizations get to participate in the advocacy for climate change. I will want to say that it is good that you have access to platforms. Yeah, I can hear you. I can hear you, Adenike.
Can everybody hear me?
Nike,
yes.
We can hear you. Just Mr. Richard is responding to the question already. Mr. Richard, you can continue.
Okay, so I will want to say, okay, networking is one key aspect organizations can grow, and being part of networks as well, youth. Organization, I choose to be a community-based organization because I understand from the onset that the issues of climate change and solutions are local, and it has more to do with adding value or adding impact locally. You think locally, you act globally. So of networks, and from there you'll be having access to information, campaigns, and you can key in to the conversations. And I don't know, the other question was on the time is now for young people. Yeah, actually young people have been doing a whole lot in pushing for advocacy. The voices of young people have been on the top burner. Like, for example, in COP 26 in Glasgow, we have young people that were part of the Nigeria delegation at the COP. They were having the red badges, and I know even Olumide was wearing one of the red badges. That means they had access to the tables where decisions were taken. But I agree with you totally that young people need to be given the opportunity to engage. And I'm happy that the Nigerian Youth Climate Council is coming up, and I pray a lot of bottleneck doesn't stall it. I pray it comes to life even before COP27, and let's see how best young people can even join the League of Nigerian Negotiators. We should start thinking of mentoring young people on this conversation so that they will understand the rudiments of negotiation. Look from this level before they grow older. So it's not when we are already at a particular age that you now start thinking, oh, you've been doing well, come on board. No, other countries, what I've noticed about other countries at the COP, like in Madrid, when I was in Madrid, I saw a delegation of primary school children from Chad. I've started attending COP. So this, it struck me because the young people are already enthusiastic. They have this enthusiasm. They are already being put on track to understand what climate change is. So imagine these young people after primary school, they were in senior primary, then secondary school, then they now come to the university. Before you know, they are already experts about climate change and understand the rudiments. So it's high time we start breeding grounds for young people as well from Nigeria to be part of that team. And other countries, like I saw other countries, I saw a lot of young people carrying the red badges, especially the European countries. You see them, young people, when you're about to gain entrance into the main building, you see them going into the meetings. We go in as observers, they go in as parties. So it's high time we start involving this, and I believe we will have a huge league of climate negotiators that have already acclimatized to the rudiments of negotiation. Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you very much, Mr. Richard. That was very, very good. Yeah, well, a lot of people that have not been to COP on this platform, we see the need that we have a long way to go when it comes to participation, involvement, and people, getting to understand the process of what they need to do in attending COP. And also, not only attending COP, how do we implement those comments, strategy on ground for people to actually understand that our engagement is more important and our implementation is more important. Thank you so much. So let me give the floor to Mr. Victor to also make his own comment and contribution. Thank you, Mr. Victor.
Well, hello everyone. Thank you so much, Olumide, again for this opportunity. I will be responding directly to Mr. Ajilore's question about how can youth in the construction space take on climate action as regards to climate adaptation and resilience. I want to say that having climate smart infrastructural designs is one very good step that youth in the construction space can start looking at. You spoke about green buildings, and there are only about 10 in the entire country. That shows the need to keep the conversation at top level. It's also a function of engaging the necessary stakeholders in your regulatory space to put into cognizance the changing activities of the climate. Because if you put it in perspective, if there have been constructions around, say, 10 headpounds of cement to maybe 5 headpounds or 15 headpounds of sand pre-climate change crisis, what are the ability of this same material mixing ratio to withstand the emerging rising temperatures as a result of climate change and a disastrous impact? So the more you keep the conversation, the more we keep on the conversation, the more we do designs around climate smart infrastructures, and the more we put into cognizance that every of the little efforts in our individual space counts as young people, the more we are also able to come into the necessary conversations with those in government offices or in the political space. So I want to say one way that could be done or achieved is when we do designs around climate smart infrastructure and we tell stories around it, and we collaborate and network within this space of climate activism to push for the need to have a shift, to have a corresponding shift in the way we have our designs in infrastructure corresponding to the emerging or the confrontations of climate change that we have around us. That is one way I feel we can do that. Another thing I want to close with, which I want to mention, is over time, it had been a knee-jerk approach to natural disasters. There had not been any situation where we had time to plan, we had time to build resilience, especially in vulnerable communities. Interestingly, these communities suffer the heaviest blow you can ever imagine in the face of climate crisis and natural disaster. So not just deployment of NEMA and sharing beddings and sharing, food, more like little stuff for people to survive, but developing and improving the capacity of young people in such communities to prepare well ahead of time. So it shouldn't just be a knee-jerk approach to emergency natural disasters, that comes up, but preparedness and engaging the local stakeholders in such communities to prepare well ahead for possibility of natural disasters should also be involved. If the states will engage youth in addressing climate resilience and adaptation. I want to stop there for now. Hope for further engagement on this topic as we get closer to COP27. It's a pleasure being here once again.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mr. Victor. And I'm very, very sure that most of us on this call have been able to get one or two things to, take home from the contribution Mr. Victor and Mr. Abubakar, Mr. Richard have shared with us this morning. It's my pleasure to say that as we continue to move on, this is the best time for us to speak to that issue, speak to that conversation that we want to see change in our system. And I want to also raise this point. COP is coming. What do you think Nigerian youth should be looking at in the area of adaptation, in the area of climate finance? This is just the beginning of this conversation. And by next month, we're going to be looking at another topic entirely that is focusing on another area, which we're going to be relating them under the nationally determined contribution. And we also understand again that Nigerians, we are talking about the net zero issue. How do we start looking at this opportunity to drive a conversation in that area as well, so that we'll be able to understand the broad understanding of what young people need to be looking forward to when we go into COP27. One thing again is we also need to understand that we have people that will be in COP and we have people that will be back home. How are we translating those agenda into implementation or into investment opportunity for young people back in Nigeria? So if you're willing to attend COP, this is the time you need to get engaged. Ask questions. How do I be part of these people? How do I be part of people attending COP? Or how do I make contributions to make sure that my reflection, my comment is going to be reflecting in the document that we're going to be coming up to together every month? So a report of this meeting is going to be shared widely, and we'll be able to understand the key action, key points that people have actually, talked about. So thank you very much. Before I call on the two speakers again to give us, like I said, we need 5 key recommendations from you that we'll be taking forward to build a document that we're going to share with our development partners, institutions that will be able to help us to translate this conversation to the government, respective people ahead of COP. So I want to say that I'm going to be posting a link in the comment section. Is a little form for us to take a little shot of an attendance to know who is on this call and to use it to continue to engage ourselves moving forward for the next couple of months. We're going to be having this conversation. So the link is there. Please fill the link and share with your within people that attend this meeting. We're going to be using that link to engage every month for people that join us to be part of the conversation. So before we go, I don't know whether I want to hear from Mr. Richard. What are your recommendations on this conversation today, moving forward, so that we can be able to articulate this and put it in a report format for our point and input moving forward. Thank you so much. Let me give the floor to Mr. Richard to give us his recommendations as we conclude this conversation. Then I'll come back to Mr. Victor. Then we round up the conversation. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Olumide. This is a very wonderful conversation. And one of my major recommendations here is to see how we can localize this conversation. We are here on Zoom. We're having these conversations highlighting issues as affects Nigeria, as it affects Nigeria and local communities. But the local community people don't even know we are having these conversations on their behalf. So one of my recommendations is, one, seeing how we can have these local conversations domesticated across Nigeria, even though it's just across this geopolitical zone moving forward. As we are having it like this, if it can be stepped down on radio stations or recorded, played on radio sections, or localize them in local languages for local people to be aware about what climate change is. Then two, I will want to advocate for young people's involvement. Young people with local solution, they should be given a platform where they can be engaged so that we can have local platforms like this to have them come talk about their local technologies. And again, there's one aspect I always have been advocating about involving the local people themselves. Like Mr. What's his name from the UN, but just say Mr. Oluseyi. Yes. Yeah, he was telling you about a country where they use pigs to know if they, as early warning signs. We have local people that have local knowledge of climate change, but because we are not engaging these communities, they are not coming out to tell us what their forefathers had as knowledge. Forget science. I'm not saying we should forget science totally, but science has its own way, but the local people have their own way. Without even the meteorological science, they know, they will tell you, with some science, they will tell you that, hey, this year you don't need to plant maize on time. You have to wait till July. Like I experienced it this year, that a lot of people that planted their maize in April lost it. But some of them waited, even April, May, they lost it. Some of them didn't plant, they waited to June. And they are local people. They will tell you that they saw this sign, this sign, this sign. It showed that the rains will not come early. It's going to come a bit late. So these knowledge are just tied down there, but they are not talking. So I feel we should move the engagement a little bit down to the local people and see how best we can get, we can use the bottom-top approach, especially in policy implementation. Like most local government chairmen don't even know what climate change is. It's very pathetic. We only have few of them that understand what climate change is. So how do we get, is it Algon involved? These are the Association of Local Government Chairmen. Let them come on board. Let them understand it. Let's step the policy from adaptation plans down to the local level. Let the conversations reach down. Let's localize the conversation and see how we can see. I believe we're going to have a wonderful impact, and I believe we are going to have a well-packaged information that we don't even know. That's one thing working in the local communities I've experienced. So I see us, one of my recommendations is domesticating these conversations, involving local people, and see how best we can correspond both and have better nature-based solutions and have better packaging to see where, even if the money comes today, where are we going to have quick interventions to see how we get quick, impactful results. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Mr. Richard. That's a very good point. Localize the conversation, help young people to, get involvement in local solutions. And I think what I'm taking away from your point is just for us to make sure that this conversation don't only have our own input, we should have input as well from the local people that are at the receiving end as well. So thank you so much for that concrete conversation, a concrete recommendation. Let me give the floor to Mr. Victor, for him to also give us his own recommendation. Thank you. You have the floor.
It's been a very good time being on this call, Olumide, and quite resourceful thoughts from Mr. Richard. One addition, or some of the other additions I want to add to the recommendation is we've actually been doing a lot of promotions without examination. And for me, I actually feel we can't just go about mentioning about the successes recorded in adaptation without asking on what yardstick were they actually measured. Are there standard measuring or evaluation highlights that were or indices that were used in arriving at such impact? There's a need for stakeholders accountability and stock taking. We need to know the progress that we have made since the last call till now. And I think when we properly evaluate where we stand, it's going to open more clearer view as to where we're going and what steps we need to take to get there. So for me, I think one recommendation is the youth needs to come to the table without fear or intimidation to ask the question of what has changed. We need to know what has changed, because if we fail to know what has changed, we wouldn't know if the previous attendance of COP had any local meaning or any local impact on the vulnerable communities indeed that needed such contribution. Another area I'm looking at, and I feel could be a point of recommendation, is can we have a nationwide adaptation challenge competition? Can we have a climate adaptation hackathon that brings out the ingenuity, that brings out the beautiful innovations that young people in this country have, you know, that allows them to showcase the depth of understanding, even from the local communities. You know, just imagine when you find communities that, you know, understand what it is with climate resilience due to the nature of what they've seen the weather patterns, you know, behave as. I think it's an opportunity to put a call through and have a nationwide hackathon, a nationwide adaptation challenge that can further expose or bring to bear, you know, bring to fore these beautiful innovations in individual communities around us. Another area I'm looking at is that there should be a way to facilitate essential finance, you know, on technological support to beautiful innovations around smart buildings, around green buildings, around, you know, climate smart agriculture. There are a lot of people, young people, youth, doing wonderfully well in these areas that lack funding. The story of the young man in Borno, you know, doing the beautiful work with electric vehicles wouldn't have come to the bear if there had not been support. You could see the number of support he was able to garner just because he was able to, you know, tell his story right. Then, you know, was being spotted, you know, by the eagle eye of young people also who are in media. So I feel there needs to be a provision for essential funding for some of these solutions around climate adaptation and resilience. These are some of the highlights I think will be very, very important to have as a recommendation for the group. Thank you once again for having me, Mr. Lumide. It's a pleasure.
Thank you very much, Mr. Victor, for that wonderful contribution. I think with your very, you know, great point, I think a lot of people would have been saying, Kai, this is the kind of, you know, recommendation young people are looking forward to. You mentioned national-wide adaptation competition, which can really help us to understand how young people are also complementing the effort of all this agenda of agreement that is being done on our behalf in all these conferences. And I think it's something that is very, very important, and how we can facilitate essential funding or financing for you know, green buildings, climate smart agriculture, and all other related issues that young people need to be doing. And I also appreciate your point where you mentioned about that we need you know, people to be on the table without fear. I think it's one of the greatest conversation that we have been having on the African level as well. But for me personally, I keep saying that when we get to the table, what is the conversation we want to have? When we are on the conversation, are we having that conversation with a sincere mind for these leaders to understand that we also need, or we also have experts that can also help them to promote sustainable growth for the for the people of Nigeria. And you also mentioned this, that we have been talking more of promotion. That's that time we need to examine, you know, or the measurement of what has been happening from the past COP and what is happening now and how we can take it further. For what Mr. Shoremekun also said is, how can we do things rightly beyond COP27? And I can tell you that this series of conversation is going to really help us to capture recommendations that are needed in different areas so that we can be able to see our own key points reflecting in the communication of our government to the UNFCCC as we move towards COP27. So thank you very much, Mr. Victor. Thank you very much, Mr. Richard, for this opportunity. I also want to say a big thank you to United Nations Nigerian office for this opportunity, giving us this platform to speak and to bring young people together. For those that are joining us again, please don't forget to fill that link I sent to the WhatsApp to the chat box. It's very important just for us to keep having conversation with you all, or keep our contacts to share with you what is going to happen next month. And from this conversation, we've also been able to understand some other initiative or some other ideas we'll be bringing on board for next conversation. One of them is to see how we can bring 2 or 3 people to come and tell us how they are actually impacting their community. My brother that spoke a question around women and youth. We want to bring people to this call to also share their great innovation on how they are impacting community, so that this can serve as example for what we want to see young people doing moving forward. Thank you so much. Thanks to Adenike for starting the moderation. Thanks to UN in Nigeria. Thanks to our 2 speakers, and thanks to people that join us and ask questions. As we move on, let me quickly say this, that we are looking for more people to come on board to organize this together. Not only us, to organize this together, to have a concrete conversation next month as we move on. Thank you so much, and have a great evening as we continue. I don't know, before I leave, if Mr. Shoremeko have a closing remark before we go, so that we can move on, or somebody from the UN Information Center, so that we can close this conversation in another 3 minutes. Thank you. Or if we don't have anybody, then
I think Bola can do it. Olumeko, Bolanle, if she's still online. Otherwise,
yes, I am.
Okay, please go ahead.
Okay. Thank you very much. It's been a wonderful conversation. Thank you to everyone, our wonderful speakers. Thank you for being here and for honoring this invitation. And for all of the participants, we want you to please continue to discuss this on your platforms, with your friends, your fellow environmentalists. The series is a continuous one. It comes up every month. We're looking forward to having another one in July. And we hope to have a more robust and more participants. This is the first edition, so we can understand the number of participants that are here, but we hope to have more young people and more women being here. I would just implore that we please put on our camera so we can have a group photograph and we have faces of everyone here. Thank you all for being here, and thank you for this meeting.
Thank you very much, Ma. If you can put on your camera, let us see your face, let us see your beautiful face, so that we can capture as many as possible in this conversation. Thank you so much. Okay. Please keep putting on. Let's take as much as possible before we leave. We close exactly to 12:27. Thank you. Okay, somebody just said they have not filled. So I will post the form again before we go again, so that you can also fill the form. It's just for like an attendance to capture everyone's details for further conversation. So if you still want to fill the form, go ahead, or we're going to, because by the time we close this call, you'll not be able to click on that form again. Thank you so much for everybody that joined. I think we can now end the call. I think I will end the call because I did a recording on my laptop, so I can share the record. You can still rewatch this conversation on all our social media platforms as well. We're going to be putting that on very soon. Thank you so much for everybody that joined, and have a great afternoon everywhere you are calling from. Bye.